Welcome to the fastest growing platform in the Gatineau-Ottawa region, bringing you the hottest guests, projects, ideas, MMA talk, and exclusive interviews. The Suits Are Off podcast, presented by Marc-Antoine Blais, Remax. This is the MMA Show.
Alain, how are you today?
Good, yourself?
Good. It's our first episode fully English now.
Yeah.
And we got a special guest.
Yeah, man, nice to meet you. I thought, I was thinking you were supposed to come here for real, but he told me we haven't misunderstood maybe, but I'm really glad that you are here. I have my glove here, my 4-ounce glove to be signed, and then, but it's for next time. We'll keep that for next time.
Sounds good.
He thought you were gonna be here physically. So I want to properly do an intro to you. You're a retired MMA fighter. You had 32 fights, 20 wins, 16 finishes. You were champion in multiple organizations. TKO, which is previous Quebec organization. WEC. You were a title challenger at UFC 129. 3-time fight of the night in UFC. Your father now coaches. So, busy man.
Busy man. All good though.
Yeah. I wanna maybe start. Maybe Alain will relate. Alain's just turned pro. Recently, he's gonna do his pro debut on February.
Yeah.
In Samurai MMA. It's a league in Quebec.
Yeah.
You made your first fight here in Hull, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah, when I was 19 years old. I just turned 19 years old.
Oh, yeah, and you won.
Yes, so it was a big night. So it was actually GEORGES St-PIERRE's debut as well, and we both won the title that night.
Oh, okay. Fun fact, there's one of my childhood friends, his father is the type of guy who keep everything. He kept the tickets from that event. And the previous week we tried to find it in all his boxes and we couldn't find it.
Oh, that's right.
He got all that when he went there. But I wanted to show you, but we did not find it. But yeah, it was a battle of the belt, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for sure.
You won and you won the belt, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And it's strange how things goes because there's a lot of fighter that goes in a regional show. Like if you anybody want to go to regional shows, you might be finding people that will go to the UFC ultimately, and that was the case for you. You went on smaller show.
Yeah, well, if you think about like UCC. Patrick Cote, Georges St-Pierre, David Oiseau, Sam Stout, we all came from that same show.
Yeah, so it's and also on a more recent note, TKO, I think it was their last event, and I'm not sure if it was the same owner, but they did a last event previous of COVID. And Cyril Gann, which is now a UFC heavyweight contender, was the final in that event. So you could see a lot of great talent in those regional shows for sure.
It was a good event, that event.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. Yeah. So let's talk about your debut. What made you do this? What brought you to that first fight? Let's say.
So I was competing in local martial arts, like tournaments and whatnot, all through my whole childhood, in jiu-jitsu and pancration. And then when I finally met Sean Tompkins, my coach, he really gave me the direction. You know, we started competing in kickboxing all over North America, and he was fighting in UCC at that time. He had fought David Oiseau. And contended for a few guys there, and so he had a connection there. And then there was a last minute falling out for the 145-pound title fight. And then the promoter Stéphane Petrie had heard rumors about me just through my kickboxing. At that time, I'd had a couple titles in kickboxing, and I was kind of known as this young up and coming fighter. So Stéphane had reached out to my coach and asked if I would fight, and every fight, no matter if it was amateur, professional, all the way up to the title, every time Sean would ask me, offer me a fight, I just said yes. Like it didn't matter if I was, if I was underexperienced or I didn't have the credit. Like I was always a yes, I'll fight. And again, that gave me the opportunity to fight for the belt right away. And I made, a debut where I won it and I finished the guy in the third round. And my opponent actually, him and I had some history because when I was coming up, he was kind of like he was like somewhat of my hero. In the local area, he was like the champion in all the tournaments. And I remember when I was 15, I competed in the adult division in all the grappling tournaments, and then he had dislocated my arm. When I was young, and then we didn't cross paths again until we fought pro for the belt there. So there's a bit of redemption and a bit of history behind the fight.
Okay,
I have a little question. You say you were fighting at the 145 division. How heavy you were at the 145 division? Because me, as an amateur, I was fighting at 145, but I'm turning pro soon, so I was wondering which I go to 135 or 145.
Well, the thing at that point, there was no 135, so 145 was the smallest weight class. And when I weighed in for that fight, so for the 145-pound title fight, I weighed in at 136 pounds.
Hey, yeah.
So
Big guy.
Yeah, so it wasn't really an option. And even there, when my first fight in the UFC, they didn't have 145, so I had to compete at 155 at UFC 58. So again, the times have changed a bit in that aspect. Is that there's a lot more opportunities, and the weight class really means a lot more. Where for myself, I just fought at the lowest weight class available, and at that point it was 145. 145. I think if I was competing in today's environment, I probably would drop to 135. You see the size of some of these guys, and how they are. They're doing the weight cuts properly, but some of these 145ers are massive compared to me. So I'd probably, if I was still competing today, I'd probably be at 135.
All right.
Okay, perfect. So, this you fought at 145. Most of your career, 155.
Yeah, so 145. All my fights that I really got to compete in WC and TKO and everything there. But my first fight in UFC, they had to be 155 because they didn't have 145 at that point. So I fought 2 times at 155, and then I left the organization to fight in WC because they had 145, and I wanted to compete against the best.
Okay, perfect. So that gave you a better option to go down at 145 in that division.
For sure.
And that organization.
Yeah, because at 155, I was completely undersized. And at that point, also my teammate, Sam Stout, was fighting in the UFC at 155. So that was his division, and it made more sense. Made more sense for us to fight at our weight.
Separate.
Okay, perfect. And you said you fought multiple times in TKO in a lot of places in Quebec, let's say.
Yeah, so
Montreal.
My whole basically career before UFC was in Montreal or Quebec-based promotion. First it was UCC, and then it turned into TKO, and it really gave us a lot of opportunities because the promoter Stéphane Petrie, he managed GSP and David Oiseau, and he really opened up a lot of doors. And the way he put on the show, it was very professional. He had the big cameras and the big walkout. So a lot of times when people go to the UFC for the first time, they get kind of swallowed up by the production and how big it is. Where we were used to, fighting in front of a camera, fighting in front of a big crowd, doing interviews, doing the pre-fight video, so we were experienced on that aspect too.
Okay, he was giving you good opportunities in that way. So it was less of a big jump when you went into the big show.
That's right. Yeah, just because you're used to having a camera in your face or the pressure of the crowd there, and that's a big deal because a lot of times it's the first time someone's fighting with a video camera in front of your face, or you having to do a big walkout with a big crowd. So if you're the more experienced and the more comfortable in that setting, the better you're going to perform.
Mm-hmm. Was it?
And for the UFC, for when you went to you went to TKO to UFC or WEC? to the UFC?
No, so I went TKO to UFC because what was happening is George and Oiseau were making a big name in the UFC, and they knew that there was some up and coming Canadian talent. So UFC 58 was Canada versus USA.
Yeah.
So they thought, hey, you know what? Like, I was the Canadian champion at 145, but I needed to be part of the show because I guess I was one of the mainstay Canadian fighters. So they wanted to have me on the fight, but the only fight they had was at 155, which I was fine with. I fought my first 2 fights in UFC and I won them both. But I knew 155 wasn't my division, so I dropped down and then went to the WC.
So when you were at TKO, how the UFC called you, or how this went?
It was the promoter, Stefan Petrie, just because he was the promoter of TKO and UCC, and he did manage all of us at that point. So he kind of put the bug in the ear of the UFC of like all this talent that we had, between Cote, Stout, myself, Vigneault at that point. Like we had a really good stable of fighters, and it made sense to bring us all on at one point, to kind of showcase the talent that promotion had.
And you remember when you had that call? You remember when you had that call where you were?
I was at the gym with my coach, and I just remember, just even thinking UFC, like this is, like just that, something that you work towards your whole career, and to hear it was incredible.
Yeah, man, it should be
for sure
amazing moment.
Oh yeah, and it. From there, you went to the UFC, and afterwards, like you said, you went to the WEC to go compete at 145.
Yeah.
After that, if I'm not mistaken, the UFC accept to have smaller weight classes.
Yes.
And José Aldo was the first fighter, first featherweight champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So he was the uncrowned UFC champ when they moved it over, right? So he had cleared out the division at 145 in WC, and he was their champion, really their poster boy. So when the UFC acquired the WC, their champions in the lower weight classes became the UFC champion. So it just got transitioned that he was the inaugural UFC champion when they came over to the division, and then our fight was the first fight for the actual belt, but they had presented him as the champion. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I was looking at your fight coming here, and on that UFC 129, it was so entertaining. And I if I could say something like that, and I'm a fan of the UFC since I was young, since let's say the Georges St-Pierre area. That's what made us, and probably most Canadians, look at the sport. At 129, I remember exactly where I was. It was at the apartment of one of my friends, and the only reason I remember is because of your fight. It was so entertaining. We were, especially the last round when you were on top of him and he was drained out. It was so crazy, man. What did you felt in that moment?
Well, it was crazy. Like, I'd fought at this point all over the world, and you think you've seen it all, but fighting in front of that size of crowd, and not just that, it was the first fight I'd ever fought in my whole home province, because MMA was illegal or unsanctioned in Ontario my whole career. So this was the first fight ever to be on Ontario soil. So it was a big deal. So leading up to the fight, there was a lot of media, a lot of hype, a lot of build up, because it was the first time that UFC or MMA was even shown, and especially at the Rogers Centre. So, it was 55,000 people there.
C'est ça. It was a big crowd there.
Yeah. So it was a lot of first. And so I think the build up was more than anything. Like I was doing like 5 interviews every day. Just because there's so much attention, so much built up for the fight. So there was, and also was my daughter. My first daughter was going to be born
At the same
time, right? So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of buildup. So I think the buildup was more than anything. And then when you finally got there, like I remember walking out into the arena and it felt like it swallowed me. Like how many people were there? Like, you know, you can imagine 55,000 people. But I do remember the second I stepped foot into the cage.
Goosebumps right now, man.
Yeah, like but once I stepped in the cage, everything felt normal.
Oh yeah,
because
you look
like but I looked like I stepped in the cage. I looked at my opponent, and then I'm like, okay, I've been here before. You know, forget about the surrounding, forget about the crowd. There's me and my opponent inside the cage, and at that point, I'm like, yeah, I've been here before.
Yeah, I always say that to my friends when I talk about hey, how you feel about when you go or before the fight. I always say, you nervous? I'm not that nervous, but it pumped me up during my training camp, and when I arrived to the entrance, it's more you fight, more you get
comfortable.
Yeah. And after, like you say, as soon as the bell ring, all that disappear, and it's just business, guys.
Yeah, that is the best way to explain it. You know, like, and again, obviously, the more times you're in that ring, the more comfortable you're going to get. Yeah. But again, if you're able to realize that once you're in the cage, that's all that matters. And you know, the buildup though does swallow some people up. You know, some people get freak themselves out, or the buildup is too much for them, and they forget about what they're doing, and that should be the focus on actual fight in the ring there.
Mm-hmm. And at that moment, you were 28. Your opponent, José Aldo, was 24. At that point, he was just another opponent. Like he wasn't secured as a legend Hall of Famer at that point, if I'm not mistaken. So it was like, was it like another?
I think he was respected in the smaller, like, because, you know, like everyone who did follow the WC, he definitely didn't have the worldwide or like UFC fan base just because they'd never seen him. But like for like the kind of hardcore fans, they knew how special he was. But that fight, you know, because there's a lot of eyes on that fight, and people remember that fight. And from there, they got to see, he did a little research on his history. And then from there, he realized how special José Aldo was. And obviously, you know, he's still fighting now, like, which is insane.
Still fighting now. He just announced his retirement. But
like he just fought like recent enough. But like, you know, so that's, 10, 12 years removed from when we fought. So like, it's pretty insane that he's still fighting at the high level.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's one of the legend, and he's still one of the best, even though he's maybe at the end of the career. If he chooses to stay retired, I think he could still compete, that guy.
Yeah, he's looking pretty in good shape, but you know, the age is just a number for some people. Like Teixeira, Teixeira is 42, and
it could happen.
But the thing is, though, with someone like that, a guy like José Aldo sticking around too long, is you don't want to tarnish what you've done, because because like I hate to say it, but someone like Chuck Liddell, you know, you just remember the end of the career when he suffered all those knockouts, not what he did before that. So you don't want to be remembered of, you know, being someone else's punching bag at the end of your career, which is unfortunate. And it's the nature of the sport. Like, the guys do get older, the younger guys do get better. And, you know, there's sometimes is a time where it's like, okay, it's the next generation's turn, and you don't want to be someone's stepping stone.
No, sister.
It should be hard on the ego, you know, when you want to leave with a win. I say it's kind of hard, maybe for a fighter. I say, you like to fight, you like to win, so you always say, man, I can go get one before I go.
That's it. Like, you know, you see that happens too often, unfortunately. You know, like, oh, I'm going to try one more. Like the perfect example is Frankie Edgar.
Exactly.
Because he just fought last week or 2 weeks ago at the Madison Square Gardens. He wanted to have his final fight at Madison Square Gardens, and he ended up on the canvas, knocked out again. And again, that's hard pill to swallow when you know, when he's at the end of the career. And you know, again, you don't want to be remembered for that. You want to be remembered for the great things he did.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the higher profile fighter, I would say, they still got that good paycheck that probably went up during all those careers. So maybe those last big pay are attractive for them to continue.
Yeah.
If I'm
Yeah, well, I mean,
so,
like I hate to say it, is like, you know, you fight for your passion, you fight for your love, but you're also fighting for a paycheck too, right? So, I mean, you are a prize fighter, and prize fighters get paid to fight. That's your job. So, you know, it is a bit of your livelihood, and you know, unfortunately, a lot of the guys maybe don't have a lot of opportunities to go back on after their fight days are over.
So let's bring back to the one UFC 129. You were co-main event on that fight card, and I was searching on YouTube to see, let's say, multiple video, but the most of the one that come up was your entrance. You chose the "I'm Coming Home" from Puff Daddy. Was it a special song for you? Or?
Well, it was just like "I'm Coming Home" is like, because like I was saying, that was the first time at that point I was 25 or 20 plus pro fights into my career, and it was the first time I'd ever fought at home. So you know, and it really was a pretty special moment. You know, because at that point I was 10 years into a fight career, and you know, a lot of my family and friends have followed my career all over the world, and this is the first time they got to see me fight at home. So I thought the song was fitting, and it really, you know, people do really remember that, and it had a lot of impact on people.
Oh yeah, it was a big moment. And me, I'm a fan of the sport, and I don't think there's an equal out there. I like to cheer for a team or for somebody, but I'm a fan of moments. Let's say if we relate to hockey, when it's overtime, that's always a moment, and we're always on the edge and looking at it. When you're looking at fighting, this is what I feel. It's always a moment, and I thought that there's no matching moment that pretty much any fighter could live in close to your hometown, 55,000 people. RODGERS Stadium, close to sold out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was undercard of GEORGES St-PIERRE, which at that time was the biggest name out there, if I'm not mistaken. Were you like close to those people, like in the locker room, or did you cross paths? Were you on the same side of the Canadian, I would say?
Well, the thing is, what I thought was pretty special is I had my pro debut and won the Canadian title the same night that George did in 2002. And, you know, fast forward a decade later, we're co-headlining an event in a home province for the world title in front of the biggest crowd of UFC of all time at that point. So it was pretty fitting, but it was almost comforting too, because like you're surrounded with people that you started your career with, and to look around like, hey, look how far we've made it. You know, and obviously with George being, you know, one of the greatest ever in the sport, it's pretty cool to say that, you know, I came up in a time with him and got to share the same arena and share the same ring on the same night as him in a card that people kind of remember forever.
Yeah, it was a really good fight. And if on your fight the judge were the same as the Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley fight, I thought that you maybe won one round or two more, because at that point José Aldo was on top of you but wasn't doing nothing, and the ref kept on putting you up. Yeah,
the judging is so biased, and sometimes on what fight they're watching. So there's got to be something done. I do think Jose won the fight against me, and there's no debating that. But the judging, you see it every weekend. It's been said for years that it's got to change, because if you think about it, mixed martial arts, they're basing their judging system on a boxing system, boxing scorecard, which normally boxing goes over 10 or 12 rounds. So sometimes, there's a round or two that maybe you could go wrong and the winner's still going to be shown. But in MMA, if you got only 3 rounds to fight and the judges maybe mess up one round, that's going to take the fight away from a fighter. So whether it's they introduce half points or just a different scorecard altogether, because the 10-9 must system is not working, and you can see that every night because 2 judges just make the wrong choice, it's going to, and again, that affects the person's career. Every fight is so important. And if you're losing because of poor judging, it's awful. Not just your paycheck, but where your career is going.
No, I understand that. And you think half a point, first time I ever hear that. What do you mean by that? What do you think is going to happen?
So they used to do that in K1 for the same reasons, because K1 was fought in either 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So it could be a 9.5 to like 10 to 9.5 or 10 to 8 point, like whatever the half point system. So there'd be a 9.5 or 8.5 or 7.5 as opposed to just single numbers like a 10-9 or 10-8 round.
So you can lose 1 round and catch back with a half a point after.
Exactly. Or you could lose the round by half a point, like 10 to 9.5.
Because if you have 10 to 9, and you won 10 to 8.5, exactly. You still,
Yeah. So, and again, I think it does make sense in a 3-round fight, introducing the half point system. And again, that's just like I've fought under those rules, and I've been a part of those rules before in kickboxing, K1 style kickboxing rules, and it really did help, because if one round's very close and one's a clear winner, it can be judged that way, as opposed to, say, you just slightly won 10-9, and the next round was a little closer, or sorry, more. You won it more clearly, and it was another 10-9. That's not the same on the scorecards.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. And is there? I think also Aljamain Sterling made a comment on if the judges were to say what they are looking at, it could be clearer also.
Yeah. If it's knockout or takedown, or if you can't sit with the judge before the fight and say, "Oh, we're gonna judge on this and this and this." So it's up to see where you go with your game plan.
Well, that's the same thing as most judges have some form of bias, because if I were to be judging a fight just from my background, I'm going to be scoring probably higher on a kickboxing bout, because I come from a kickboxing background.
If it's a wrestler.
Exactly, right? So if you see a takedown or you see ground control and you're a ground fighter, you're seeing the dominance. But say you're a kickboxer and you see the guy maybe get a sweep or get back to his feet, I would score that. So it's so much bias. So having it more clear cut of what exactly is being looked at or what is being scored. Like if it's a takedown, the be all end all to win a round, that to me, that's not it.
Is there a moment that clear in your mind that it's your best moment in your MMA career? It might be your Rogers Centre Stadium, but is there a best moment, and also one of the hardest that you had in your MMA career, and what's the toughest in that challenge, let's say?
Obviously the Aldo fight, because again, just the build up, and for me, it was felt like it was like a 10-year overnight success. It's like any artist, like you grind in the dark for years, and then there's that one moment in time that you get to showcase, and all of a sudden you're put to stardom. But again, it wouldn't happen without those 10 years of competing without anybody knowing, so to say, right? So it was almost like, a coming out party of just all the years of hard work and the ups and downs. Like you said, there are so many ups and downs in this sport. Definitely like a bad string I had when I was released from the WC. Because I had a couple of poor performances, and I got released by the WC. And then, so that was obviously a dark time and downtime, but I knew that wasn't it for me. And I fought my way back. I ended up fighting an Affliction and got another couple wins in TKO, and showed that I belong at the top. And then I came back to the WC, and then the UFC. I didn't lose for 3 years. And then I got the José Aldo fight. So it's a sport it's a grind, and it doesn't happen without the ups and downs, because there's going to be that in this sport. And I'm just being confident and committed to the long-term goal of what we have.
And especially in that time when you were competing to early to all the 2000 until you retired at 2012, it was not as mainstream as it is right now. So there's no guarantee that you're gonna have a good pay on those pro sports and everything. So
Yeah, no, it's a like for most, like I would say, it's a passion built sport. Like if you don't have the passion for it, if you're going in there for the paycheck, that's not the. And again, I that also the era I was like you were saying, the era that we had, we were not getting paid, what we deserved, and it's. It was definitely built on passion. And that's one thing that I knew I always had is passion and love for the sport and passion and love to compete against the best in the world. And that was always my goal. It was never like, it wasn't the paycheck. And that's one thing I always, like, I went in there to win because I wanted to win. And that was always my motivation.
Yeah. And this is what separates people. And I think what separates people from being great is passion. If you got that passion, you could be separate yourself from the pack, no matter what you do. I'm not a fighter. I'm a real estate agent, but if you have passion, you will separate yourself from the other people. And I think you could relate on multiple things, and this is the proof of it. Like you made it to the top level at the highest stage. And what drive you was the passion.
Yeah, and that's it. Like passion. I always said that's a little quote I always had is passion breeds success.
Passion breeds success. It's
change a lot of things in 1 year. That's good.
No, so if you put your all your effort and your mind into it, there's not much that you could do you can't do for sure. You chose to retire at a young age. How's life after fighting? Did you was it hard to do the transition, or were you prepared?
Yeah, well, the reason why is first off, after I fought José Aldo, at that point, like I was on a 3-year winning streak. I feel like the performance without the win, obviously, like the performance of my whole career that it really got to showcase. 2 weeks later, I had my first daughter. And then I lost my next 3 fights against guys that I believe that I should be able to beat in 1 round. And I just seen that I was not at my best anymore. And I competed for 11 years at that point against the best of the world. And when I was at my best, I fought for the world title and I put on my best performance of my career. After that, I seen that my performances is not as strong. And I was not in this sport just to compete. I was in this sport to compete against the best in the world. And when I did compete for the world title, I was at my best. And I was almost like, I owed it to myself to walk out on my own 2 feet to say, okay, and now let's put the same kind of energy that I put into my career into moving forward.
And it's impressive for you to take that decision, but because like we said previously, there's a lot of fighters that continue to do it because to go get that last win or to go get, and you think you got out at your own time. And I think because you did not went out with you went out on your decision, so I think you were at peace a bit with that process.
Yeah, and you know what? And the thing is, like, this sport is my passion, and I'm still involved in it every single day of my life. Like, I made the transition to opening a martial or MMA facility, coaching, and now I have to put my effort into. I feel my biggest asset as a coach is leading by example. And leading by example with work ethic, with a mental toughness and training. And leading by example for the young guys.
Okay. And where is located your?
It's Adrenaline Training Center in London, Ontario. So Sam Stout, Chris Hordecki, myself. We opened in 2008. So at first we ran the gym, so we all had a great facility to train for our careers, and now it's a career to teach on the next generation. Of fighters and people coming to the gym.
Yeah. And what's the biggest difference between now and then? Like the fight, I like to hear that, and we asked with one of our previous guests his opinion. And for you as a coach, what's the biggest difference between people that come in the gym now and the new generation?
So sometimes I have a hard time relating because I never ever need to be motivated to train or never needed to be motivated to work hard. So sometimes it's it's a personality thing. Like everyone's got such a strong personality in this sport, and the people that you train. So sometimes it's hard to relate because I look at it the way the training I look at it the way that we're training and how I focus, and not everyone thinks and feels the same as me. So it's been a learning curve to learn how to work with the younger guys that maybe don't have the same mentality or approach as I did. But I think a lot of the traits that I have, I can hopefully instill in some of them, and I can learn from the young fighters as well. Some of the skills and traits they have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they look up to you for that, for those things.
Yeah.
For those quality, your hard work and everything and your dedication.
Yeah. So I think that's what very few leaders, and I'm not talking about just in sports, in general. I think very few leaders lead by example. And that's one thing I try to do every day.
Mm-hmm. Are you still sparring with the guys? Or?
No, so I do a lot of the pad work and conditioning training, but the sparring I don't do too much of the sparring. So
you did your part in your.
Well, the thing is, I have one speed, and I've
okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody's gonna get killed.
So they're gonna get hurt or I'm gonna get hurt.
You still got it.
Yeah. So that's one thing I've always been like that. So it's hard for me to turn it off. So it's either on or off, and I think having it off is better for everybody.
Perfect. So also by searching for you on Wikipedia, we saw you were part when you retired of the Toronto anti-bullying program.
Yeah, so the UFC, like we've done a lot of events with the UFC, and just trying to put a positive light, and because one thing I think every pro athlete, there is a big responsibility of you being a role model, and that's one thing that I try to do still. I do a lot of work within the schools and after school programs and working with younger kids, and again same thing as leading by example, trying to show a positive impact for the young guys and giving them an outlet. And I think martial arts is a fantastic outlet for anybody of any age. So we've had a lot of success with younger kids at our gym. I know that we deal with a lot of at-risk kids that are welcome at our gym under this program that we do. And I think it's shedding some positive light through mixed martial arts and the gym and the training and the atmosphere and the mentorship that we have.
I say the discipline in the martial arts gym are the best, man. It changed my life. When I was young, I had a lot of ups and downs, and the martial arts saving me from getting in problems and all that stuff. So in 5 years, I say it's saving my life. So hear you talking about that, it's blessed, man, because I know it can change life.
Oh, that's awesome to hear.
And hats off to you also, because I think the level is, for me watching it as a fan, I think the level is getting up, let's say. Like the top 15 fighters are closer than talent-wise and what they're capable to do, like compared to your days, let's say.
100%. So I feel that the my era, I guess, if you want to say, the guys were more fighters. Like we fought because we like to fight, and we were kind of more really strength in one area. Where now I think the younger guys that are came up watching us, and they're an athlete that maybe chose mixed martial arts as opposed to choosing basketball or baseball or football. So now we're getting better athletes because this athlete chose our sport as opposed to another one. And and then, obviously the skill set, they learn better because they're more athletic or more gifted with skills. And they're, again, you can see that the levels is every show. There's something that happens that you've never seen before.
Yeah, back then I say we're all the tough guys want to do MMA, but now everybody's doing MMA, man.
Yeah,
The
and you can see
athletes,
like these guys that, you know, if they chose football, they'd be playing pro football. Like they're just that much better athletes. And again, the toughness that comes, you know, you wouldn't be able to do this without that. So you have to have it. But again, I think the athleticism is definitely risen so much higher, and they pick up more like skills easier or more skills than what we had. So I think the level is definitely far greater.
Yeah, and hats off for people like you that teach the younger generation, because I think in every sort of in business or maybe in fighting, if the actual fighter teach the younger one, it's always gonna get better, and it's so much a new sport compared to, let's say, hockey, soccer, and everything. It's getting exponential, the progress. So hats off for people like you that teaches, and also your coach and people like that.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic sport, and you know, like I'm going to be in this till the day I die.
Yeah, it provides good moment. Like I said, I'm a fan of moment, and every fight there's a good chance to provide you a moment.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so entertaining, and I'm a big fan of the sport.
Yeah.
Before conclusion, we're really happy that you chose to accept that. Like not a lot of people would accept that. It's our first show in English, also. We're gonna give you a gift. It's the whiskey bottle. It's a company here in Gatineau, a new company of alcohol. They made their first batch of whiskey, and they're coming in Ontario. So
cool.
They're building a facility, so soon it's going to be available in LCBO everywhere.
Awesome.
So we're going to arrange something, and we're going to send you a bottle for your time and your kindness in that process.
Well, I appreciate that. That's amazing.
And where to find you now? Your gym, the address?
So Adrenaline Training Center is in London, Ontario. So we have a lot of young up-and-coming fighters, actually. So we, I think we do have a fighter fighting on that samurai card coming up.
Okay.
Gord Cunningham. He's one of our middleweights. We have Mike Adams, Brendan Sutton fighting out in FLA out East Coast. So we have a bunch of young, hungry fighters coming up. So we're hopefully, just continuing the legacy that we started and carrying it forward to the next generation, because there's a lot of talent at our gym, and we look forward to, starting their careers now.
Will you be present in that samurai card?
Yeah. So if Gord fights, so it's been talked about. I don't know if he signed a contract, but if he be there, I'll be there as well.
Okay, perfect. We'll be there for sure, because awesome. I think he's gonna make his
pro debut. Yeah, your pro debut. Excellent. Well, good luck.
Yeah, man. I hope I can see you there.
For sure, man.
Fucking nice.
So maybe you'll have the opportunity to sign the glove that you so thank you a lot, man. Really appreciate for your time, and hope to see you there, and wish you best of luck.
No, it was great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thanks.
Ciao, boys. Ciao. Thank you.
This was the Suits Are Off podcast, presented by Marc-Antoine Blais, Remax. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. N'oubliez pas d'aimer et vous abonner à notre chaîne YouTube.